What's going on, y'all? My name is Tommy. Welcome back to the channel. This week, by request, a Psychic Trickster. Take Psychic, take Spell Trickster, put them together. Yeah, I guess that's what you would call that, huh? Anyways, if you're liking what you're seeing, like, subscribe, ding the bell. Stay caught up on all your stuff. Remember, Patreon is the #1 way to keep these videos coming out and gets you a bunch of cool stuff. Google Sheets that all these things are built on, third-party content, and, you know, the ability to cheat magic and do real weird net shenanigans at well-run, fun tables. But for now, let's dive in. Okay, so before we talk about the whole thing, as always, let's talk about that sweet, sweet free archetype. Oh, by the way, we're using free archetype, and I think I will be forever. Follow this card if you don't know what that is. It's important. The Spell Trickster dedication requires one to be able to cast spells and be trained in one of the 4 casting traditions. Check. Arcana, Nature, Occultism, or Religion, respectively. The Spell Trickster modifies the effects of spells each time we cast a spell corresponding to any of the myriad feats the archetype gives, which, by the way, are a lot. You decide whether to cast the normal version or the modified version. You can only apply one mod to a spell at a time, and when you take this dedication, you choose up to 2 4th-level Spell Trickster archetype feats for which you meet the spellcasting prerequisite. You automatically gain those feats ignoring the level prereq. Yes, anding magic, having different tools in a toolbox. Having different tools in a toolbox which occupy the exact same spell slot. Without any extra prep or extra actions, it's really fucking good. We'll be using the Psychic for our class today, and they also get to do a lot of yes and with magic, so it's ludicrously on brand, as per that request. Gathered Lore will be our conscious mind, casting off our intelligence and giving us the Recall the Teachings action, which we can only use when our psyche is unleashed. But when that happens, for 1 action, until the start of your next turn, you count as having prepared to aid all allies within 30 feet of you. The aid reaction lets you always roll occultism. It probably comes over really eldritch and over the top, and I think that's fucking awesome. It's also an incredibly powerful reaction, truly. Did the fighter miss by 1? Did the rogue not crit by 1? There it is. Ta-da. In a world where a +1 means so much, being able to just tick that on, yeah, no, it's great. Did I say conscious mind? That's our subconscious mind. I remember what the psychic subclasses are called. For our conscious mind, the Distant Grasp will be our choice today. Distant Grasp lets us grab up to 1 bulk with Mage Hand, eventually up to 3 by level 7, so theoretically by level 7 you're moving small PCs around. But the real secret sauce here, I think, is the Amp. Amping Mage Hand allows us to move creatures about. We target a medium creature, or smaller, and we attempt to shove them, rolling a spell attack against their fort DC. The creature takes a -10 foot circumstance penalty to speeds until the spell ends, and we can sustain the spell to shove them again. The Distant Grasp also amps Telekinetic Projectile, increasing its range to 60 feet, and allowing us to, on a success with Telekinetic Projectile, push targets 5 feet away. A critical success pushes them 10 feet away. Heightening this by +1 increases the damage by 2d6 instead of 1. Shoving usually feels bad from the point of view of the marshals, right? It interacts with the map, you're usually just pushing them back 5 feet. What if the spellcaster could sustain Mage Hand, shove someone, push them back 5 feet, and save the action economy for the marshals? You see it all over the place. So often, it's the best idea for your 3rd action to step out of range, or sometimes even just stride away from the monster which you think will chase you, because the monsters tend to have, on level, better attack and damage than the PCs do, so forcing the bad guys to step or stride means they don't have that 3rd attack in a full attack routine. I mean in 3 actions, my 1E brain is showing, or worse, things that have really scary over-the-top 3 action activities that they can get up to, you don't gotta worry about it, because they have to move first. This keeps the people up front from being mollywopped a bunch while giving them their 3rd action to do whatever it is they would do. Raise a shield, aid, step into a flank, so on and so forth. We'll be playing a half-elf today. For our background, you can grab anything with bonuses to Constitution and Intelligence, and for our starting ability scores, we're looking at a Strength of 10, because we're moving things with Mage Hand, not our biceps, a Dexterity of 12, because we don't super need it a whole lot, but I mean a little bit is nice, a Constitution of 16, because you know, psychics and their nose bleeding when they cast magic, and also your HP is low, so buff that. An intelligence of 18 because, well, you know, big brain, that's who you are. A wisdom of 12 and a charisma of 10. For our feats. And I'm not taking natural ambition on a human for once. That's a full caster. I feel like I've cheated myself forever and ever. You know what? Let's talk about why. At level 1, we'll be grabbing Cooperative Nature. This grabs us a +4 circumstance bonus on checks to aid, something that we're probably going to be doing a lot with our third action. A +4 is so huge in this system that it just feels so necessary, especially because a 20 is so hard to reach at the beginning. This makes it easier and gets you to that point where you're just hoping to not roll a 1 that much faster, you know? Our first class feat will be Warp Space, an interesting little amp that allows us to choose a square within 30 feet of us to which we have line of effect and sight, which allows us to determine our spell's line of effect and line of sight from that square, as well as whether or not creatures have cover from the spell. This cannot extend normal range, but it can, like, if people are hiding behind objects shooting down at you, you can target from behind them. For when you really need to throw a rock at the back of someone's head, but you can't get at the back of someone's head because they're hiding. Reading this doesn't seem as over the top or as flashy, and might not even use it a whole lot, but this feels like a really good tool in the toolbox for when it's needed, and that's kind of the theme of this build. Of course, we'll be grabbing the Spell Trickster dedication on the archetype feat side. For those free things we're gonna grab Shining Arms and Wild Lights. This means we will need to begin play casting Light and Dancing Lights. Shining Arms allows you to cast light on, let's say, the Barbarian's Great Pick. Its duration is a minute, and when a creature wielding that weapon critically hits, you can dismiss the spell as a reaction to cause the bad guy to be dazzled for a round. After using this reaction, you can't Shining Arms again for 10 minutes. Dazzled is huge. Dazzled puts a flat check on the bad guys that target the good guys. We really like that a lot. Wild Lights makes a 1 minute duration single floating light in the shape of a tiny creature. Your best friend the Sprite, or any other Sylvan anything, or like a Will-O-Wisp. It hovers over your head unless you spend a single action that has the Concentrate trait to direct the light to move up to 30 feet, in which case it remains there until you direct it again. If you direct it back, it hovers and follows around until it's directed somewhere else. At 120 feet, it winks out. This is like the same level of distraction as the Pyrokineticist. I really like this. In settings where the Fae are very present, whoops, it's some kind of Fae out there, we better go investigate. Damn tricksy things, and suddenly the enemy's out of formation. In settings where they're not, off the top of my head, what about a little floating bit of fire that might make it look like in the darkness like something has suddenly caught flame and folks need to investigate. And then when they find it, they find, yeah, in fact, that's just some magical thing that's not hurting at all, or really honestly worse if you look at the mechanics of things. Wouldn't it be really funny if, let's just say, the guards of that fort you're storming, man, I do that a lot in my examples, don't I, happen to critically fail to recall knowledge about whatever the hell that thing is, and they just keep attacking it, presuming, like, in a super abject mechanical way, they're not breaking its resistances or some noise. It expands from there. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with this. Irizoko Tattoo, I think, will always go here for all of my psychics for once per day. You can 3-action activity to get a focus point back to amp things again, right? Seems just so necessary. With our free archetype feat, we will grab Forceful Push. This requires you to be able to cast Mage Hand, and modifies the spell such that it targets one creature. It lets you push your foe telekinetically. Make a spell attack roll against fort DC. On a success, it's 5 feet back. On a crit success, it's 10 feet back. Hey, wait, that's our psychic stuff. Yeah, I know, right? I see that, but hear me out. Imagine a world where you've amped Mage Hand, you sustain it, push someone, then for 2 actions cast Forceful Push. Not only does this give you that tool in the toolbox, again, when you are out of focus points, it also lets you do it twice in one turn. Really great when you just absolutely must send someone 10 feet back careening off a cliff or something. Our very first non-cantrip Spell Trickster feat, Animate Net. This requires you or someone with more bulk to be carrying around a net, but that's easy enough to do. This alters Animate Rope from a 2-action spell that does some out-of-combat tech things to animating a net to throw that net at a medium or smaller creature within 20 feet of it. You attempt a spell attack roll against the target's reflex DC, and on a success, the target is flat-footed and takes a -10 circumstance penalty to its speeds until it escapes. A critical success immobilizes it until it escapes. The escape DC is equal to your spell DC as long as the spell lasts. We're going to be sustaining a lot of spells, truly. Once the spell ends, the escape DC returns to the normal DC of a net, which is 16, and a creature adjacent can interact to remove it. Now, this goes strictly beyond the realm of the mechanics of this spell, but what if a rope was tied to that net? And what if that rope was tied to, oh, I don't know, off the top of my head, the barbarian's waist, the cavalier's horse, the back of your ship in an aquatic campaign, and suddenly you're fucking keel hauling people. Well, that's not keel hauling, but you know what I mean. This turns a level 1 spell into Snap My Fingers, Reflex DC, or you're flat-footed and maybe can't get away from the marshals. That's really fucking cool. On the archetype feat side, we will grab Disc Rider. This requires us to be able to cast Floating Disc, which normally is an 8-hour spell, which can carry 5 bulk of objects, but never creatures. This modifies it to be a 10-minute sustained cast, which can carry you as well. While doing so, it can move across liquids. It moves along the ground, but presumably doesn't trip like pressure plates and things. And you can't carry other creatures with this, so it isn't as foolproof as other iterations. But when you need it, it's a useful tool. Kind of thesis statement for this concept, and like, frankly, we need this here to qualify out of Spell Trickster. We will grab a Witch Dedication. Any patron which grants you access to the arcane casting tradition will do. As of this recording, that's Rune. My sense is there will be more. We just want a little more casting, and a feat we'll talk about in a second, and a familiar. Because you know what a familiar can do for us? That's right, kids, it can give us an extra focus point. We love that familiar focus so much. When I first built this, I definitely thought about using the familiar to aid your own aid checks, but they don't stack with that sweet, sweet half-elf feat, so it is what it is. Basic witch spellcasting comes online here as well for more arcane spells. We'll take Cackle, of course, so we can sustain things for free sometimes, because oh man, we need it. Then check this bit of meanness out. On the archetype side, Siphoning Touch. This modifies Vampiric Touch, which is a 3rd level Arcane, Divine, and Occult spell. By the end of the build, we will have access to all 3 of those casting traditions. Normally, this is a touch spell. Normally, this gives us temp HP equal to half the negative damage that we do when we tag them. Or, you know, you could cast Vampiric Touch and grant the temp HP to an ally within 30 feet. Now, granted, this is kind of dangerous, because this still means we need to be up front tagging them. But in a world where presumably we can run the fuck away afterwards and then grant the ranger or the ranger's bird enough temp HP to stay in the fight while also doing damage, it's an interesting yes and. I really like it. Next, we'll grab Foreseen Failure. As a free action, when a spell you cast has no effect because you crit failed or everyone critically succeeded their save, you can cast a different spell with the same number of actions. That is also a different spell, but surely there won't be that many red numbers come up in the VTT, right? Expert Witch spellcasting comes next, and then it's a little out of line, but at level 13, we're gonna grab Multi-Talented for the Cleric dedication. For your deity, you do you. I'm not looking to grab any particular domains or really tied one way or another to healing or harming. Again though, for strictly the purposes of this mechanical exercise, we're just here for divine casting. And we'll grab it on an ancestry feat. So immediately after, we can grab basic cleric spellcasting and conscious spell specialization. This gives us an additional spell slot of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th level to cast only spells granted by Conscious Mind stuff, and then at 18th we get an additional 5th. So what that means for us is we have a free open spell slot for Kinetic Ram, Telekinetic Maneuver, Levitate, Fly, so huge, and then eventually Telekinetic Haul. A lot of these feel like very big tech spells that you might not necessarily want to prepare, especially like Levitate. But if there's an extra spot for it, why not? Next up, we'll grab Reach Spell. It's awkward. When I was first reading this, I definitely thought the Spell Trickster said you can only apply 1 modification, and I intuited that as I couldn't also metamagic. But, I mean, Reach Spell Vampiric Touch to buff people while not getting hit in the face. You know? I like that. We'll grab Expert Cleric Spellcasting alongside this, and then at 18th, pretty damn easy, Master Witch and Master Cleric Spellcasting, then Divine Breath and Patron's Breath at level 20 for even more spells. I'm not going to highlight any spells today other than the ones we've talked about, strictly speaking from what our meta magic plays with, I mean our spell trickery plays with, that feels like meta magic in a really good way, and I really like it. But we will, however, have a primary casting tradition of spontaneous spells and 2 archetyped casting traditions where we either have access to every spell that we can jam in a spell slot from whatever god we're worshipping, or however many scrolls we can feed our little magic fox friend. Don't overfeed your pets, kids. For the ancestry feats on top of cooperative nature, we'll grab Elfin Instincts at level 5, because being able to shove people out of formation, throw down cover, tie people up, or, I mean, in the worst case, just fireball the hell out of them, it's a pretty good choice. Cooperative Soul means we'll never fail aiding again. If you're at least an expert in the skill you're aiding, occultism, you gain a success on any outcome rolled to aid, other than a critical success. That's so good. I really like that. Multi-talented, of course, for the Cleric dedication, then Magic Rider. These are such strange ancestry feats. A lot of people get them. Haha, it's a MacGuffin that lets us go wherever the hell we want. Which also yes-ands in an interesting and on-theme way for this class. When we are the target of a teleportation spell that transports more than one person when we are teleporting the party somewhere, it can affect an additional person beyond the normal limit. Additionally, when we do a teleport, ourselves and the other targets arrive no farther than 1 mile off target, regardless of distance traveled. So you'll at least be a mile from where the big bad is living at the end of the game, right? Seems real good. Skill feats are always up to you all. You'll know what you need more than me. For our general feats, it's toughness, it's die hard. Armor proficiency would be helpful. Numb to death, because, well, I mean, we're very small. We're probably gonna die. Then Canny Acumen choosing our, let's say our reflex save. And yeah, there stands a really versatile thing. I like this for almost any campaign. It requires that you coordinate with your party to do certain things, but that's as easy as sending a message between the session you're playing and the next one. And the rewards can pay dividends. I hear all the time that support casting is harder to play in 2e Pathfinder than just any way I started blasting. This goes a long way to assuage that, I think. It also feels like really fair debuffs, which I'm very here for as someone who understands conceptually how useful that is got, especially in 2e, where suddenly they're flat-footed, makes a really big difference. And again, there's so many spells jammed into this character that you should be able to pivot into whatever the hell you need in really interesting and unique ways. But that's all the time I have for this one. What do y'all think? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know what spell trickery feats you've been taking. Are you just altering Fireball to blast differently? Of course you are. I see you and you're valid. Thanks for watching, y'all. We'll see you next time.